Hey there, everybody. Welcome to Behind the Pulpit for the middle of November. I think it's November 18th today. I can never keep my days straight.
That's the correct.
Is that right?
That's
November
the correct
18th?
day.
That's right.
Yes.
Which camera am I looking at here, Tim? I feel like...
that one that you're currently looking at.
This one right
there
here?
You go. That's your
I
camera.
see. There's my standard point. How are you doing today?
There
We're
it
glad
is.
that you're joining us for our show today. It is prime time. We're recording today at 3:20 in the afternoon.
No.
And
not prime
it is
time.
past...
Not prime time.
past Pastor Dave's bedtime. So
it's the third shift, man. This is not like a good time.
you have to excuse him. He might actually fall asleep at some point in the middle of the broadcast here. So
Oh,
we'll
hey,
have to wake him up.
hey.
Can you keep an eye on this, Tim, as we go through?
We're entering the reaches of the night.
It is. It might be getting dark pretty soon here, Pastor
It is the
Dave.
witching hour.
The sun is setting in about an hour and 30 minutes, so we'll see what happens. But hey, we're glad you're joining us today. We are. How many days are we away from Thanksgiving? I can smell
too
the
many.
turkey and gravy. Tim, but you were telling me the other day that you're a leg man over there. You love to snatch up
Leg man. Oh,
for Speaking of Thanksgiving,
I'm a leg man.
or a thigh.
I love.
Thigh
If it's
leg.
dark meat, it's on my plate. That's all
right.
I'm saying. I think white meat and poultry is overrated unless it's duck. I don't even know if you consider duck is different. We don't have to get into the duck.
My mom sent me a text yesterday for Thanksgiving. She said, do you prefer white meat or dark meat? I said, what kind of a question is that? Of course you prefer dark meat. I mean, come on.
White meat is on chicken and turkey is
That's right.
is devoid of all flavor. It's just
Indeed.
It's just
Indeed.
it's just meat.
All right, so Thanksgiving's coming up in just a little bit. Pastor Dave, once you have the turkey, see, this would be bad news if we were doing this recording after Thanksgiving and it was 3:30. You would already be asleep with all the tryptophan from the turkey that you had for Thanksgiving.
I do like white meat. I'm just gonna say, man. I don't know. I don't know if I'm allowed to be your friend anymore, Tim.
You
and Bob.
would.
No, it's okay.
You
You
would.
just cover it. You just cover it in gravy, right?
Cover the dark gravy.
You cover it in gravy.
I do. You're right
Okay,
about that.
so you eating it without the gravy?
Well,
There you go.
Sometimes I'll have it like on a sandwich. Do you
Okay,
guys-
with
do you
mayo
guys-
and bread,
Yeah,
like you need something.
yeah. Do you guys do the second Thanksgiving around 6 or 7 p.m. with the rolls and the turkey and stuff? Salt and pepper.
It's not scheduled.
You got to go in for the second helping later on.
That's usually when I
Okay.
eat pie.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it depends on how much food we make for the day, I guess. All right. Anyway, we're
It's
about
coming. A
we're
week and a
about
half
3 minutes
away.
deep in this episode right now, and all we've talked about is turkey. So
That's
let's,
okay.
Let's move on.
We can keep it going. I got things to say.
I bet you do. Hold on to them because maybe we can do the weave as we go through the episode right here. Hey, so before we dive into our next segment, I did want to mention that this coming Sunday, Pastor Dave, is our annual Vision Sunday. We're going to talk about all the exciting things that we are thinking about for the upcoming year, and we're gonna have some. We're gonna pull some exciting things out of our sleeve. Last year we were playing pickleball on the stage. Who knows what's going to come? Tim's going to give us ideas.
Pickleball and kicking lights over.
That's right. Well, you know what? You got to stop leaving the lights in the middle of the stage. While we're
I
moving
push them
around.
off to the side now.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that there was some reformation there. So, so anyway, that's coming up this week. We're going to take a break from Revelation, but we're going to be sure to debrief Pastor Dave's sermon on the harlot as we get further into this episode. Pastor Dave,
That word came out already.
it did. It did. It did. It was. Hey, it's biblical. It was right in there. We also wanted to say a big thank you so much for your generosity for our ministry, for the Ministry Appreciation Month. Man, we were just blown away. Thank you so much. All of the people you see on there just work really hard to build God's kingdom here and help lead our church. And so I know from me to you, from everybody up there, just a big thank you. We definitely appreciate your appreciation. Would you add anything to that, Pastor Dave?
It's an honor to serve you.
There you go. He's a man of few words today. He's biting his lip over
I
there.
just did this yesterday.
He did. By the way, so just quick, the announcement video I did yesterday with all the lightsaber, BB-8 stuff was Pastor Dave was very concerned in the second service that he was not going to have time after the baptism. So I added all these things in there to make sure I gave him enough time to prepare for his sermon. And I realized later on in the week that I forgot I was going to do the ministry appreciation thank you, and both Tim and I forgot. We got done and we didn't realize. it wasn't in there. So Dave came behind me and did that for the benediction. So thank you, Pastor Dave, for picking up the ball where it was dropped.
Thank you for remedying our collective absent-mindedness.
Listen, for however many times you guys have picked up my drop balls, I still owe you big time. So
There you
no
go.
problem.
They're bouncing. I see some balls bouncing over there.
Dropping them left and right around here.
We're off the rails. We're off the rails.
Let's get back on the
Get back
rails
on
and
the road.
let's move into our in the news segment. We're going in the news. All right, I don't have a news story today. You guys were really excited about one particular news story that happened over the weekend that was pretty controversial. So I'll let you
Definitely controversial.
I'll let you take the ball and run with it right now.
Well, when I was a kid in the 80s, Iron Mike Tyson used to knock people out in a matter of seconds. I mean, there was a lot of first-round knockouts. I saw this man beat people with one punch. They dance around the ring for 30 seconds, 90 seconds, or whatever, and one uppercut. So I still had faith that Tyson still had the power. They say it's one of the last things to go is your power. And I was a little surprised that I didn't feel like he brought everything that he could bring. So people are now starting to say, was this a legitimate effort on his part? Was this a little staged? I mean, Jake Paul is, a YouTuber. Is he really any kind of professional boxer? Was this all just a big, huge show? So I think a lot of us were, watching Netflix Friday night wondering, is this possible that a 58-year-old man could actually keep up with what is Jake Paul, 27-year-old man?
Just a shade older than Tim.
It's the sport goes to the young man, right? It's a young man's game. So it's not surprising that a 58-year-old guy wouldn't be able to win that match decisively. But he's Mike Tyson, so I think a lot of us were wondering, does he still have one more good uppercut in him? And the answer was no. So that was Friday night. But there was a couple other matches before the Tyson fight that were actually quite close, quite gruesome, quite they were nail biters. So Tim and I were talking a little bit earlier about the ladies' fight. There was a very dangerous cut, and sometimes that happens when you have a left-handed fighter facing against a right-handed fighter. The eye that faces the opponent can be very vulnerable to the jab, and there was a headbutt that came in, broke open her skin right below her eyebrow, and Katie Taylor just sort of took advantage of that and continued to pummel her opponent throughout the match, and that was bloody. And many people think that Katie Taylor should have lost that match because of how well her opponent did, but controversially she won. I don't know, Tim. What do you think, man? What's your opinion on Friday night's activities through Netflix? Did you watch everything?
I was out. We were actually doing some Christmas decoration shopping, so I wasn't able to watch all of it, but I watched the last two. Mm-hmm. I did notice a little bit of a headbutt action there.
Yeah.
Were you drinking your cocoa?
Leading with the
I was
head.
not. I was not drinking the cocoa.
During the fight.
It was a little too late for cocoa for this guy. But
Okay. All right.
yeah, I noticed that. I mean, I'm not a huge. I don't follow boxing. I will watch a big fight when it comes on. That a lot of other people are watching. To me, it definitely looked like the person who lost won. And then you look at the stats afterwards, like punches thrown, punches landed. It was all
Right.
doubled and the higher percentage. And so I texted, shout out to Matt Hull. I don't know if he listens to this or not, but I'll send him the episode. He is my cousin's boyfriend, and he is really into the fighting, and he has done some training, and I believe he's a personal trainer. I don't know for fighting or not, but I was texting him, and I was like, I feel like this seems wrong. He's like, yeah, that's wrong. They got the decision wrong. So that was interesting. And then
Amanda Serrano,
yes,
really had the better fight, and that was their second fight. That was a rematch, and she had lost the first time. So maybe there's a third
Maybe.
Maybe third time's a charm.
And then the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight. There was a certain point where I'm sitting there and I'm just like, what are we doing here?
What are we doing here?
Like, I get
happening?
it. It's like Netflix definitely won that fight because you have this young guy who is just like he's throwing punches where he can land them, and then anytime Tyson tried to do something, Jake Paul kind of looked like he ran away. And
But the fact that he can get in the ring when he's 58
No,
years old
absolutely.
is pretty impressive. I mean,
It is.
that any of us will be able to do that when we're almost 60 and we're facing somebody who's like
I wouldn't
25.
go anywhere near a ring right now. So that's something.
I almost turned it off and put on an episode of like Matlock or something.
Wow.
I was like-
Matlock.
But I
That's
feel like
taking
I
us
was
back to the 80s
I feel
right
like
there.
I was invested. I was like, I've already come this far. I gotta see this thing through.
Right.
All right. So what's the Christian worldview implications for boxing?
Well, there goes my theology sprint question.
Well,
Can Christians watch boxing, Pastor
All right,
Dave?
this is the
What's
theology sprint.
The debate here.
I was
Give us a defense.
I should have thought of this before my Sunday morning sermon, but it didn't occur to me till Sunday afternoon. And this is how illustrations come to preachers. But the message in the morning was about Babylon. So this mighty, powerful city full of strength and wealth and influence that people thought would never fall, eventually fell decisively in a single hour. So that's the story of Babylon at the end of Revelation. And I was thinking, man, that Tyson fight is a good illustration of that. Here's what once was an invincible man. Here's what once was someone with a lot of worldly power and strength and pride and a lot of wealth.
You're pounding that table over there, Pastor Dave.
Sorry, I didn't knock that. So it was like, here's how it goes. Everything fades over time. Babylon doesn't last. Even the greatest, most powerful human beings, eventually, Father Time catches up to them. Eventually, age takes its toll. Eventually, the things of this world come to nothing. So the lesson there is, unless our lives are built around the sure promises of God, everything else will fall apart. And I think that's a good sort of takeaway from the Tyson fight. From a Christian worldview
is Mike
perspective.
Tyson Babylon? Is that what
Yes,
you're saying?
That's my illustration.
Okay.
Yeah. Now that would have been a good illustration for the sermon.
Well, he had
Sunday morning.
he
right?
once had a tiger as a pet, so I think there was tigers in Babylon.
That's perfect.
He just
I
got
think he had
so excited.
Two
when it-
tigers, I think, and he made a lot of money, and he blew a lot of his money on stuff like that.
It's amazing.
Like, tigers and stuff. So maybe that's why he needed another fight to sort of recapture some of his cash.
He had to come out of
Bought too many tigers.
that is the moral of the story. Don't buy tigers because they might bankrupt you.
That's true. Yeah.
All right. Okay, so that's our In the News segment. Let's move on to something. Speaking of fights, let's move on to our book war. We've been doing this each week now, and we've changed up the... we got a scoreboard.
Oh, my word.
Whoa.
Look at
2
that.
to 1. Yes. All right.
This is preliminary. We're gonna make this better.
Best out of 7, best out of 11. What are we doing?
I don't know. We can keep it going.
Wow.
So what happens is
I sense a little corruption.
Dave and I-
kind of like that boxing match with
or
Serrano.
kind of like the votes that are being recounted in Pennsylvania right now.
Yes, a little bit like that.
Anyway, so we're doing the Dave and I will be recommending a book. So we're each recommending one book each week, and the goal.
Did you hear that? Dave and I will be recommending how many books each week?
We're doing one book.
He
One
said
book,
it
Pastor
twice,
Dave.
ladies and gentlemen. Twice. He just committed.
Well, because
One
the
book.
goal is that we have to get Tim to purchase the book that we're recommending. So it's a little bit of a game, which is why I'm currently up.
And I
on
do
the
purchase
leaderboard.
them. I do.
And I did hear that he came in with my recommendation from a couple weeks ago.
I daily doctrine.
Let that be a lesson to all of you.
Did the
Wow.
first one this morning.
This is going to be an expensive thing for Tim.
I'm
All
not,
right,
there's
so
no way I can buy all
is
of
there
them.
a coin
but-
toss? Like, is there a coin toss? Because whoever goes first,
I believe
they can change their recommendation
I
later.
believe who went first last week.
I don't remember.
I think Bob did.
Okay, Pastor Dave,
All
you're
right.
up.
Okay, so this one was a no-brainer because of the sermon that I preached yesterday called A Tale of Two Cities and Babylon. So, Tim, I think you have visited the church in Philadelphia called 10th Presbyterian.
I have.
And there's been a lot of famous preachers there. Over the years,
Hey,
Donald
hey.
Gray Barnhouse.
You're supposed to be
Philip
the-
Ryken.
These are some
you
good
can't-
tactics.
Can't bring in the external.
I'm bringing in the nostalgia from Tim and his time there at 10th Pres. This has got personal.
Got to
memories
make his
attached to it.
decision just based on the book, not on the nostalgia.
So back in the day, James Montgomery Boyce was the pastor of 10th Pres in, I think it was the 80s and 90s. So he put together an excellent book, Jim Boyce, called Two Cities, Two Loves. Bob and I were at a conference a couple of months ago down in Philadelphia.
I also bought that book, but not to recommend it.
See,
Well,
even Bob likes it.
It was given for free, though. Actually, I didn't buy it. It was part of the packet of attending the conference.
Oh. Well,
But it
it's
is. I
worth-
did look at it. It's a good book.
It's worth your second look. So he originally published it in the 90s, 1996, I believe. But this is the revised edition that his wife put together, Linda Boyce, and it's a little shorter. So the first one was well over 200 pages. This one's only 193 pages because she cut out two
Wow.
chapters.
Shorter.
There was two chapters on the leadership of Nehemiah that she decided didn't need to be in here. So if you're looking for sort of a theology about how do we engage culture as a Christian, maybe you're thinking about that today. Maybe you're like, man, we've lost the culture war. What exactly are we supposed to do? How do we engage with the culture? This is a great theology of how to do that. Two Cities, Two Loves, and it's kind of a spin-off of Augustine's great famous book, The City of God, for a modern day audience. So James Montgomery Boyce, Two Cities, Two Loves, revised edition, brand new, hot off the press, 2024. That's the copyright. So it doesn't get more current.
good stuff.
And it's
than that.
purple.
Also, plug. It is purple. If
Yellow
you're
spine.
looking,
I do like those colors. The purple and yellow is very attractive, very eye-catching.
It's very like L.A. Rams.
Okay.
Yeah.
if you're looking for a secondary besides Millington Baptist Christmas Eve festivities, I believe 10th Pres does a wonderful Christmas Eve with French horns and classic carols. If you're in Philadelphia,
They do a
on
Christmas Eve, huh?
They do.
Woo!
Ah, nice.
There you go.
What's cool about 10th Pres is like the music comes from like behind
Envelops
you.
you.
It's really cool.
It's like someone's leading you from the back, and you're just worshiping the Lord without a focus on people on the stage and stuff. It's a cool environment.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Let's hear it, Pastor Bob.
There you go.
All right, so I have a book that has nothing to do with Pastor Dave's sermon on Sunday that I pulled up because I had to go through and decide what I was going to recommend. The author's name is David Bahnsen, and I've benefited from him recently and over the years on matters of investing and economics. He's a really talented guy in that respect. He runs the Bahnsen Group and really insightful cultural commentator. So his book, among many that he's written, a few that he's written, this one's called Full Time.
Is this related to Greg Bonson, though?
This is Greg Bahnsen's son.
It's his son,
Greg
right?
Bahnsen, his dad was a apologist, well-known apologist, but this is his son. So Full Time, Work and the Meaning of Life. Work and the Meaning of Life. So this
going
is
on
what
with
the
that
book
phone cord?
is all about. Well, you get a call full time, right? Back in the day, you had to get calls to go in and work.
Wow.
I don't know. I'll have to ask. Mark would be able to decipher it. So, Tim, let me just do this. Here. Let me just read you the table of contents. A couple things here. So this is what this book covers. Chapter 1 is A Crisis of Despair, Dignity and Earned Success. So he talks about the benefits of work. Chapter 2 is on the current pandemic. A shrinking workforce stifles economic growth because Tim's generation doesn't want to go to work. They want to, I don't know, not work. And then he talks a little bit in here about creation, the Bible's message on work. He talks about money and ambition. He makes an economic case. He talks about why we need to rethink retirement, the idea of this 30-year vacation at the end of life, and a couple other topics here. So I found this to be pretty beneficial, and that's the book that I'm going to throw on the table today. I did consider Dave recommending The Lord of the Rings, but I thought that would be unfair. So this is my recommendation for today. Mm-hmm. There you go, Tim. Full Time or Two Cities, Two Loves. Did you hear that deep sigh over there? I think is it 1 week he's going to say, I want to pick neither.
Just a clarification. Did you say retirement was 30 years at the end of life?
That's what he said in here, rethinking the 30-year vacation at the end of life.
I don't know if I've ever met anybody who was retired for 30 years.
Well, I mean,
That's
it depends on
incredible.
how long they live. I mean, if you retire at 65 and you live to 95, that's 30 years.
I guess so, man.
Yeah.
But that's something.
Well, for those of you watching online, Pastor Bob has won. He is up 3-1. Pastor Dave, I love the book idea, but I don't know. I feel like sometimes I feel the pull of the Gen Z's work ethic sometimes,
There
and
you
I feel
go.
like that could be a book that could be beneficial to me. Pastor Dave, don't look so downtrodden. It's going to be okay,
David
man.
Bonson's really good. I mean, he's got really good stuff. He's got a podcast called The Dividend Cafe. if
You
want
guys
more
are making it
about
real
investing.
tough.
Yeah.
Really tough.
Apparently, I'm not making it tough at all. It's just obvious who wins every time.
I'll tell you what, next week I'm going to bring in a large systematic theology, and I'll recommend that. You can recommend something else.
I can't believe he won that. He literally read the table of contents. I was like, table of contents? You won by reading the table of contents?
I was giving you a flavor of what it
30-year
covers.
retirement? Like
You were
this is
making
not
fun of
a
the cover.
This is not a realistic book.
I'm sorry, Pastor Dave.
All right,
Bring in the Lord of the Rings next
I'll
week.
take the victory and just kind of get going here. So there we go.
All right.
All right.
Bob is the winner.
All right. Thus ends the book war skirmish for this week. We'll see what happens next week. Looks like you have some ground to make up, Pastor Dave. I better seeing some better book recommendations.
This is worse than the scorecard against Mike Tyson on Friday night, man. This is like, man.
I'm
I
about
can't
to win the
land a
best out of
punch.
7. We're going to see. We're going to see. All right.
You're shucking and jiving over there.
Okay, so Tim, I believe we have a question this week. How about we answer that, and that's going to, I think, parlay us into our chart. I know Pastor Dave has a chart to reference, and then we're going
it's
to
something.
be talking about the harlot and the serpent this week and the fall of Babylon. So,
All right. I didn't copy and paste it in, but I'm doing that now. But while I do that, I just want to thank you. I just want to thank John Rickershauser. He is our.
Is there an award for best question asker?
There's definitely an award for most questions asked, and he is the winner. And we appreciate.
The questions are good.
These are great.
Good.
These are awesome questions. We just wish more of you would ask them. I feel like we can get some more people. I know. Hey, DJ out there, I know you're listening. Ask some questions, man. I know you listen to the show. I'm giving out shout-outs today. I don't know.
My goodness. All right.
So here's the question. I'm going to put up on the screen. Is there a span of time as the bowls are being administered? We read about the seals being opened and what each church's position is being revealed. Did the other churches hear about the seal that wasn't for them? Why doesn't one bowl convince the unbelievers to repent? Why would anyone hold out for another and another?
Another bowl.
Right. Yet there was the other one on the cross next to Jesus lost.
This is more like a Revelation 16 question, Pastor Bob.
This was,
so I'm gonna
admittedly,
let you
this
take
was
it.
for last week, but we were discussing the election with Amy, so we didn't get a chance to get to
so
it.
there was a forbearance on the asking of this question. So there's different views on the bowls that we tried to mention. I think in terms of most futurists would say that the bowls are a span of period at the end of history prior to Christ's return. And I don't know that we get an exact amount of time on how those things are poured out. My take on it was that you notice that they're poured out one by one, and I do think it's God not just pouring them out all at once, but giving different judgments, holding back the full amount of his wrath so that people would come to repentance. And why do people not come to repentance? I don't know. There is some people that their hearts are so hardened that they don't turn to Christ. Now, I do think from a literary perspective, it is paralleled with the Exodus account. So one might say Pharaoh's heart was hard. Seems like he's turning back, but then he doesn't, and ultimately all of the Egyptians that are pursuing the Israelites are judged by the waters of the Red Sea. So I think there's a biblical allusion parallel there. But I think it does point to the hardness and the depth of the human heart. So if every futurist is going to say that this is happening at a period right before the second coming of Christ and the battle of Armageddon. Secondly, if you're an idealist, most idealists would say this could be something that's happening throughout history, but there also is a school of thought that this is they leave room for this being something that happens at the end, similar to futurists. And then, of course, there's the preterist position. So Pastor Dave put together a wonderful chart. Here's our chart citing that talked about the relationship between the seals and the trumpets and the bowls. And there's some very specific things that happen that point to how these bowls are poured out in the preterist position. So
now, quickly, before we go into that, for those of you, we cannot put this chart on the screen because it is a chart of massive proportions.
It's a 3-page chart. It kind of looks like this.
So if you are watching on YouTube,
it's going to link to the PDF.
there is a link below that you could follow along with while you're watching. If you're listening on any of our podcast platforms, you should be able to access the link in the description of the episode,
so
and you
click
can follow
on the
along
link,
as well.
and you can study this as Pastor Dave explains. Did you hear what he said though, Dave? Tim? He said
what did he say?
it's not a chart, it's a table.
Oh man!
And I'm not quite sure what the difference is between the chart and the table, but apparently this one's not a chart. So this is not a chart sighting.
I guess. Right? It's a
subcategory of charts.
Yeah. So,
all right.
Anyway, if you want to know what in the world does the preterist say, I mean, these bowls are so devastating. How possibly could you say that this was fulfilled in the first century? I'm putting together a table. It's like a work in progress. I decided to post it anyway, even though it wasn't finished. But
for critique.
Yeah, I mean, you're welcome to critique. But there's the 7 seals, the 7 trumpets, and the 7 bowls are there. Click on it, and you'll see, oh, this is what the preterist would say. So, for example, there's a whole bunch of people that get sores on their body. What's going on there? Like, when did that happen in the first century? Well, there was a plague that broke out, and it was basically because of the death that was happening all around, that it was causing affliction on the living, causing suffering for the Israelites. You talked about the possible Sea of Galilee interpretation, where they had run away into the sea and they were getting their arms chopped off
and heads chopped
off and blood in the sea. So that's like an
dead bodies in the
apocalyptic
sea.
way of describing the sea turns to blood, right? Then guess what? Rivers and freshwater sources turn to blood. That's the same reason, because the water supply was contaminated because of the corpses in the Sea of Galilee. So those are the ways to understand the bowls in terms of a preterist perspective. My favorite preterist interpretation is in the bowls. It's that the last one, the 7th bowl, is that 100-pound hailstone thing. And then when you read about the Roman machines, the catapults, and what they did to destroy the walls of Jerusalem, you go, oh, so that's what they were calling the white hailstones. And so that's the way the preterists would understand those things. How long did that last? Maybe 6 months to a year. And that was the final siege and the burning of Jerusalem. So that's the preterist answer to that question. The whole thing would be 3.5 years, from about 66 AD to 70 AD. And inside there is the seals, the trumpets, and the bowls. Yeah. But I think from your perspective, if we were to take a futurist view, a lot of times futurists will see like a gradual intensification, and the bowls are quicker. The seals come at a certain pace. The trumpets kind of ramp things up, and then by the time you get to the bowls, it's like we're almost at the end.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a short period of time of these things being poured out at the end. Now, there's different futurists. So if you're dispensational futurist, you're thinking these things are happening during the 7-year period at the end. If you're more like a historic premill, then it's not uncommon for people to think that the seals are something that happens throughout history, similarly with the trumpets, but then a lot of people will generally say the bowls are this kind of short period of intensification at the end. So they're different, and partly why they point to that is how wide the impact is. So the seals are affecting a third of the earth, or a quarter of the earth, and then the trumpets, I think, a third, or vice versa. And then, but the bowls affect everything. Like it's like at the end, all the judgment is coming, justice is coming, and so most people think these are something that happens at the very end of history. If you're taking a futurist perspective, or if you're taking an idealist perspective, there's room for that as well. But of course, the preterists would say this is all first century stuff. So
relax. It all happened in AD 70.
Just chill out. There you go. All right, I think we answered all of those
Good questions,
questions.
John.
But it was a
Thank
great
you.
question.
Thank you, John.
Now you can go study and make up your mind.
But check out the link.
Yeah.
I'd be
Check
curious
out
to
the
see
link.
what
There you go.
think of the link. It has actual quotes from Josephus.
And if you want to take it and recreate a better chart and send it back to him, you could do that as well.
We will
You're
look at
welcome
it
to
on
do
the
that.
show, and we will give you a letter grade.
That challenge
Wow.
accepted. There you go.
You guys are sharp at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Listen, this is my job. I'm supposed to think of fun things for the
Right.
show. This
Okay.
is
Well, next week
how my brain works.
Next week we'll do an 8 a.m. So you can be hopped up on the caffeine and everything.
I'm game.
Did you see his expression?
Let's do it.
Excited. All right. So speaking of charts and revelation, let's dive into the sermon. So Pastor Dave, yesterday you had quite the sermon. I missed the prop though. You promised a prop and you did not deliver. So promise is made, promise is unkept.
3 chapters.
Why don't you give us a sense of what you covered in the G-rated section of our show here?
3 chapters, Revelation 17, 18, and then the first part of chapter 19 tells of the fall of Babylon. You probably recall from the end of the bowl judgments that Babylon had fallen.
Oh,
and this
Babylon.
is more of a telescoped magnification view of what happened during that final bowl. Here's how Babylon fell. And so chapter 17 talks about this apocalyptic relationship between a prostitute and a beast. The preterist interpretation is that the prostitute is Jerusalem and the beast is Rome, and they're in an illicit relationship with one another, an idolatrous relationship that goes against everything God had wanted for the people of God. Because of that, the city of Babylon, the prostitute, is judged, and the beast actually turns on her, hates the city of Babylon, hates the prostitute, and destroys her with fire. And then chapter 18 is a lament psalm, broken down into 4 parts, about how people are sad that Babylon has fallen. And then, since this is a bit of a divorce, as Yahweh is sending his bride Israel away, so to speak, or breaking off the branches, according to Romans chapter 11, from the tree, we need a new bride. And so now we reach the climax of the book of Revelation, where this whole book is headed, and it's headed to a wedding. And there's an invitation that John gets to the marriage supper of the Lamb, which is really astounding news, so amazing that John actually falls on his face in awe and wonder about what he has seen in terms of the future of the bride of Christ, which is the church, which is us. And so it ends on a very hopeful note. Though Babylon falls, the New Jerusalem is revealed, and John is absolutely floored, and it's beautiful. So that's the summary.
Well, thank you for that, Pastor Davis. A wonderful summary. So I got a couple questions for you. I wrote down several as I was listening intently to your message yesterday. The first one is there was a lot of sexual morality in chapter 18. So can you tell us, is that a literal sexual morality, or how do you interpret that? What's the lesson for us?
Not at all. It's the most
Other than don't engage in sexual morality, but what's the larger thing here?
That's not what it means at all, actually.
All right,
So
good.
it's a complete metaphor. It's an analogy. It is just a way of describing idolatrous relationships, unfaithfulness to Yahweh God, the covenant God of Israel. And so it's described in terms of a marriage, and God expects his people to be faithful to him, yet they're not faithful to him. They're not trusting in him. They're trusting in worldly powers. And so this is considered to be idolatrous, and he calls it harlotry, which is a graphic, apocalyptic, vivid image to describe the fact that these people were not really obeying as God had called them to obey. So a lot of times you think about those images, and it sounds like we're describing women, and we're really not. We're mostly describing the male leaders of Jerusalem who were not being faithful. So don't take it the wrong way. It really isn't about sexual relationships, although that's perhaps one way in which we can be disobedient to God. That's not the primary way in which that image is being used in Revelation 17.
I'm sorry. So is it not true that in the Old Testament, the idea of sexual morality and infidelity is often spoken of in terms of spiritual idolatry terms? Is that at least part of the background
everywhere.
here?
I mean, it's everywhere. It's in the book of Hosea. Right. It's in Ezekiel 16. You and I did that seminar on the book of Isaiah. It's all over the place in the book of Isaiah. In the book of Isaiah, in chapter 1, Isaiah the prophet says, Jerusalem, you have become the harlot. This is Isaiah chapter 1, verse 21. So it is the dominant metaphor of the Old Testament in terms of describing the people of God and their lack of faithfulness to Yahweh.
So is the takeaway here that when you read the Bible talk about sexual morality, it's not always talking about sexual morality?
Not in an apocalyptic genre like Revelation.
And yet sometimes it is, like in an epistle. In an epistle, Paul's definitely saying that, but not...
He is. There's a teaching that's very valuable there. That's just not really what's at the center of Revelation 17 and 18. So,
okay, good. Let's move on from the sexual immorality to something else. So you've been talking quite a bit about this preterist position. I was wondering if you can talk here about why you find that position compelling for chapter 17 and 18. And then does that affect your view of the second coming that you're going to be talking about in 2 weeks?
Yeah, I was trained with the futurist position largely at Philadelphia College of Bible and Dallas Seminary. They were very dispensational futurists. I have so much respect for that particular position and the leaders of that particular school of interpretation. I, in some sense, owe them a debt I could not pay. So I don't want to in any way disparage the people on whose shoulders I'm standing reading the Bible with the tools that they gave me to read the Bible. But yet, at the same time, I think it's fair to say anybody should be able to be critiqued. I should be able to be critiqued. Any dispensational scholar should be able to be critiqued. Nobody's above critique. And I think as you think about the preterist position, it really does ring true in chapter 17. You have this harlot who is described in the colors of the priestly garb and described with the stones that we find in the images of the temple. And I don't think that's an accident. So I think she's being described in a way that reflects the city of Jerusalem. And it says that she's responsible for the blood of the saints and the blood of the prophets and the blood of the martyrs. And that was Jerusalem. Even Jesus said one time, no prophet can ever die outside of Jerusalem. And so you begin to see these hints about who's John talking about, and you realize everything that was happening in the first century, and you go, wow, maybe this was Jerusalem. And then once you get the Babylon city down, you move over to the beast, and you start to see how this fits together with the Roman Empire, these 7 heads and 10 horns, and 5 have fallen, and then 1 still is, and Nero was the 6th emperor, and he kind of fits the description, and the number of Nero is 666, and you start to go, wow, maybe this beast is first century Rome. Maybe this is the Roman Empire who's in league with the harlot. And then it says in chapter 17, then the beast turns on the harlot and destroys the harlot, which is exactly what happened.
It sounds like a dysfunctional relationship.
Very, very dysfunctional relationship. But so that for those reasons, I find at least this view is something that we should consider. If you're still a futurist, I think you should consider it as at least a near fulfillment, as a type that's looking forward towards what's called the antitype or the ultimate fulfillment later in the future. So sometimes it'll be called a trajectory of images that just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But at least you could say this is some kind of near fulfillment in the first century. So people talk about like the mountain peaks of prophecy, how one is behind the other and you can't really see the other. This was the first mountain in front of them. First century Jerusalem being destroyed by first century Rome. There's something going on there that I think is worth considering as we interpret this book. So,
yeah, I think it's fair to say something significant happened in 70 AD.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how you could say it didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it was the end of the era, the end of the old age and the beginning of the new age.
There you go. All right, so you had a statement that I thought was pretty pithy and catchy that I've been thinking about. You were, the chapters very much compare and contrast Babylon, the message of Babylon, the voice of Babylon, and Jerusalem, the true city, the city of God, the city of man. That was your opening image that you used. So I'd like to talk a little bit about what does that look like for us today? How do we recognize that? How do we fight against it? I thought your discussion about the love of self versus the love of God, and I forget if you came up with that or you were quoting Augustine or somebody. I couldn't help but think about what Carl Trueman calls the general philosophy of our age right now is expressive individualism. That we live in an era that's corrupted by the love of self. We are obsessed with ourselves and our feelings and all those things. So how do we know that we're focusing and we're listening to the voice of Babylon? And how can we reject that and listen to the voice that comes from Jerusalem, from the true God himself?
So this is where I think it's really easy to apply our passage to today, because even if you think Babylon was fulfilled in the first century by Jerusalem, it becomes a cipher. It becomes a term that applies to any ungodly city that raises itself up against God. So, yeah, the quote that I had in there about the love of God versus the love of self is an Augustine quote from his famous book, The City of God. Yeah, how do we know if we're living for one city and not the other city? I think that word self is a really good way to be a metric there to see, am I really living for myself or not? So there's so many different ways to apply that. I talked about just simply a work ethic, school, working hard at school versus sort of slacking off, cheating, plagiarizing, using ChatGPT to write sermon outlines, Pastor Bob. Not that anybody would ever do that.
It's an assistant, Pastor Dave. It's not, it's not writing the sermon.
I know. I mean, I think it's okay to use it as a tool. I'm just kind of joking around there. But you can see how that tool would cause some people to be more like sloth, right? Okay, so that would be a way to indulge the self. Or like just overindulging in any kind of consumption. So that could be like food consumption.
Does that apply to Reese's peanut butter cups?
It totally does. And people are so kind to me to bring me one of those once in a while, and I so appreciate it. But there's a temptation in my life to like.
Tim likes them too.
Okay.
You can, if you don't like, you can pass it along.
I could pass it along, and
Yes.
that would be a great way.
That was for you.
To live for the city of God, not the city of man.
The disciples had all things in common, and they shared all their possessions,
Right.
including Reese's peanut butter cups.
Right. So sharing is another way to think about it. So being generous versus being greedy. So that's a way to say, okay, am I living for the city of God, city of man? Speech, how are we using our tongues? Are we just saying whatever comes to our minds without restraint, without any filter, or are we holding our tongues at times, being measured in our speech? Those types of readily available everyday applications come to us on a moment-by-moment basis. And we always have a choice, live for the city of man, city of God. The discussion here is, how do we live for the city of God?
Yeah. So I want to pause and recognize the momentous feat we've accomplished here. We've come to the end of chapter 18, and we're going to take a break, as I mentioned, for Vision Sunday this week to talk about all the good things that God's laying on our hearts. But after that, we're coming back for Advent, and we're going to be in chapter 19, where Jesus returns. So those of you that were slogging through chapter 6 to 18, which is an interesting section of Revelation, hope is here, and Jesus is coming on the white horse. So we've come to the end here, and you had this really poignant part of your message where you talked about the voice. I believe it was the voice of Jerusalem that's going to one day call us home, which is where the trajectory of Revelation will take us. We'll wind up in the new heavens and the new earth with the new city, the great city of Jerusalem, coming down. My question here is, what's interesting is at the end of chapter 18, people are lamenting the fall of Babylon, or lamenting the fall of the city of man, and not celebrating the arrival of the city of God. So my question for you, Pastor Dave, is why is it that people don't focus on this future glory and don't live for it, and instead focus so much on the city of man and weep when it crumbles?
I mean, the scriptures tell us that the God of this age has blinded the minds of unbelievers so that they can't see the beauty of Christ. I think that there's a sad reality that we cannot see the glory. We cannot really understand how much better Christ really is than all of these things that we trade him for. So, we believe the lie. We don't understand the treasure hidden in the field. And I think Thomas Chalmers is famous for his phrase that we need to defeat sin by having the expulsive power of a new affection. And I think that's the way we say no to Babylon, that we have found something better. We found something greater. And we're not like actually giving up anything by pursuing God and pursuing his ways. It's like a little bit like saying I'm going to give up tin so that I can have gold, right? So we're not really trading anything that's going to cost us anything. It's pursuing that which is better, that which is more valuable, that which is more glorious, right?
It's an upgrade.
It is a total upgrade, and we would be foolish not to take this deal because the end of Revelation is so full of glory. And I just dipped my toe into a couple verses in chapter 19, and oh my gosh, it's so good. John's on his face already, and he's just now starting to see what's to come. And it's so awesome.
And we got like 4 more chapters.
We do, and it is
Boom.
all good news from here on out. And so...
So you've made it. Good job. Thanks for being with us.
And this is why the book is so relevant to the first century readers and to all generations, because it really does provide great motivation to live for what's coming. And, as the old famous saying goes, what you believe about tomorrow impacts the way you live today. So if we really believe this is in our future, we'll choose to live for that. We will choose to pursue that because we can say no to anything if this is what we get to say yes to. And we're going to continue to press on forward towards the prize.
And we're going to be singing Joy to the World.
Yes, we are.
Let heaven and nature sing. Let heaven and nature sing.
Far as the curse is found,
There
baby.
it is. Boom. All right. We're going to be there. Jesus is coming back. But before we get there, Vision Sunday this coming week.
It's going to be great.
And then we're diving into Advent. It's going to be a wonderful Christmas. Christmas is coming, Pastor Dave.
It is. And we're looking forward to Vision Sunday. Don't miss this Sunday. You're going to see all that God has done in the year 2024 and then all that the leadership is praying that God will do in the year 2025. It's a great time to be part of Millington Baptist Church.
Boom. And Tim's going to put together a wonderful video, so we're looking forward to that.
No pressure, Tim.
I hope so.
We'll see what happens. All right. So was what he covered before with the boxing satisfactory for
No
the
sprint.
sprint?
Okay.
All right, good. So we can move on to Body Life. Just a couple announcements before we...
Just one.
Just one.
One.
And by the way...
Focused.
By the way, before I mention this, we are not going to have announcements at all this week because the sermon's going
Come
to
to
cover a lot of
church,
the things.
people.
So if you
No
want-
announcements.
If you come to church for announcements, you're going to be sorely disappointed, or you might be amazingly happy because, well, we're going to be talking about a lot of amazing things this week. So, City Relief Packing Party, that's going to be December the 14th, 9 to 11 a.m. I just had a wonderful coffee meeting with Sidney Bowie, who is one of the leaders over there.
Love him. Big fan.
He's a big guy. He told me that they just got the certificate of occupancy for their new facility, and we can come for a tour. So I'm going to talk with you guys about that. But we're going to be doing a packing party on December 14th. We're going to put together hygiene kits. We're going to have a presentation. We're going to eat breakfast. If you want to support City Relief, if you want to serve together as a church, if you want to bring your kids out, if you want to have a lot of fun on December the 14th, you need to come to this. Feel free also to help us get more kits. Our goal was 200. I think we've had enough money come in that we're going to surpass that, but I'm going to blow it out of the water. I want to make City make 2 trips to get all the
Let's do it.
the kits for this
Santa's
event.
going to need a bigger bag.
Come on, we're gonna be spreading the love of Jesus out on the streets this Christmas. So, boom, there you go, Pastor Dave. I want to see you pack 20 kits just by yourself.
Let's be that church.
All right, folks, thank you so much for joining us for Behind the Pulpit this week. We're looking forward to seeing you this Sunday for Vision Sunday. Pastor Dave has to go take a nap. I'm gonna go do a run. We'll see you later.